South Carolina just splattered Tennessee last night. 63-38 was the final score here. So let's hit the rewind button, as we often do on this program, and let's go back to, what do you want to say, Thursday, Friday, whatever. Let's go back to Friday morning. You and I go out, favorite coffee shop on the corner, Main Street, and we get ourselves a nice cup of coffee. Maybe you get a bagel, maybe you get some cinnamon toast, and I tell you, hey, I got something you need to know. Lean in. I've already seen how this game plays out. I've got the final score. Do you want the final score? You say, yeah, I want the final score. Well, the final score is 63-38. And you say, that sounds about right. That's, these two teams, Tennessee's really explosive, and if they're scoring that much, they don't really care how much South Carolina, and then shh, I just put my index finger over your lips, and I say, finish your muffin. I told you it's 63-38. I didn't tell you who was hanging 63, though. And then you look at me and you go, no, surely not the team that failed to score an offensive point a week ago against Florida. Surely that's not the team that's getting over halfway to 100. Well, yes, it is. Yes, it is. There are some very, very violent numbers being shown currently on the screen there. This was a landmark win. You know the rule around here. We talk about the winners first. And the winner definitively in this matchup, South Carolina. I'm going to acknowledge that this was a really, really big win for Shane Beamer and company. It was, but I need you to meet me halfway. Okay, we got to barter here a little bit. I need you to acknowledge, as I talk about how big this win was for you guys, that none of you expected it. I have the DMs to prove it. Some of your very, very high-profile public figures up there were kind of sort of on record going into game week about talking about how bad the score was going to be. And look, Tennessee did put up a big number. It didn't matter because there was no shot they were keeping up with you. Spencer Rattler essentially played the brand of football that got everyone excited when he was coming out of high school and then got everyone re-excited when he was transferring from Oklahoma to South Carolina. But a lot of you thought they'd get smashed. I'm right there with you, to the point where when we were formatting the Thursday night show, Colin, you remember this? You and I looked at this Tennessee-South Carolina game and said, do we put it in the upset alert segment? And I voted no. I voted no. Why? I didn't think there was a shot. I just didn't. This is the most bizarre, mind-jarring outcome that I've seen in a long time. Understand what we witnessed. We witnessed a multi-touchdown, like a 3-touchdown favorite, lose by 25, just out of nowhere. Tennessee lost to Georgia and had gotten themselves right back up off the deck. South Carolina played horrifically a week before, which goes to show you what Meemaw said once upon a time still carries every bit as much weight today as it did when she first said it. And that is, nothing about November has to make sense. Nothing in college football in November has to make sense. It just is. It wasn't even just this game yesterday. There was a lot of stuff all around the country that didn't make sense unless you understand that it doesn't have to make sense. 35 first downs for South Carolina. These are the game drives versus Tennessee. Leave this up for a second because it's going to take me a second to read it, Colin. This is going to jolt you if you're driving around listening on podcast. These were the drives for the Gamecocks. Touchdown, 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 touchdown. Then they ran out of time. They had to go to the locker room for a little while. Then they came out cold and they had to punt. Then they get back on track. Touchdown, 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 end of game. There is no turnover on downs. There's no interception. There is 1 3-and-out conspicuously placed in there, and then the rest of their possessions go for 7. Wild, wild stuff. November's the deep end. Talked about it coming into last week. November's the deep end. The thing about Tennessee is I just thought they could swim. I think all of us did, especially after you had seen them reestablish or reassert themselves after the Georgia game. So South Carolina's sitting up there, and they're in the most wounded of wounded animal modes. I just didn't think it would matter. Like, I didn't think that they could be – I did not think there was enough motivation. I didn't think there was a level of being fired up enough that would matter because I didn't think they could execute like that offensively. We haven't seen it all year. Comes out of nowhere. Spencer Rattler is out of his mind. He is Steven Garcia against Alabama in 2010, out of his mind. But November ends up drowning Tennessee, and what really put just a big damper on the ending is not only are they out of the college football playoff conversation, they lose Hendon Hooker for the season with an ACL tear. So that's not any news that anyone wanted to see today. He's been one of the most fun players to watch in college football this year. He's been part of a reclamation project there, and I think he's established himself. If he never plays another down there, obviously, he's established himself. But it was one of the, this is going to sound hyperbolic, I just don't think it is. It's one of the worst losses in the recent memory for this program because of the magnitude of it. They've had a lot of bad losses, but those teams weren't good. This team was headed to the playoff. This team had odds-on favorite juice to make the college football playoff. And you're talking about seeding, and you're talking about getting your starters some work, and you're talking about avoiding injury, and all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, baseball bat to the face in Columbia. The sport does not guarantee everyone a window, okay? So this is part two of the depression today for a Tennessee fan. I know what, after the anger subsides, you will be tempted to do. And I would think the same way if I were you. I would think to myself, okay, oh well, we didn't get the job done this year, but this is just the beginning. So anything that we achieved this year, that was just going to be a cherry on top of what is to come down the road. Now, I've got confidence in the direction of that program. Don't misunderstand me. But I know this sport does not guarantee anyone a window. You're not guaranteed that things will just automatically improve 5%, 7%, 10%. Do we think they will? Yeah, I think that there are more talented versions of Tennessee down the road. I think Josh Heupel will have a better collection of raw talent, but I can't guarantee you he'll have a better team because teams are made up of far more than just talent. One of the most impressive things Lincoln Riley has done is prove just that. He's got a lot of talent, and it is gelled into a really, really good team. And Josh Heupel took these pieces and gelled them into a really, really good team. He'll have more talent down the road, but I don't just assume they'll be right back in the thick of it every year. That's why this stuff is so crushing. Because when you're there, you got to take advantage of it. Hopefully you will have a 5 or 7 year, 10-year window. But that's not always the way it happens, and history has taught us that. It really irritates me we did not feature this on Upset Alert. Okay, so Shane Beamer. Really interesting conversation around South Carolina right now. The fan base has been so conflicted because the offense has been terrible, non-functional at times, and then they go last night and they do something radically different than anyone has seen them do all year. And so if you just look at the numbers, you may think to yourself, well, I was calling for overturn in the offensive coaching staff, but now I look at these numbers, maybe they got it figured out. And then you get a little deeper into the weeds and you realize, maybe it was just more a collaborative effort. There were a couple of programs last night, by the way, in big statement wins that may have shifted around some play calling, shifted around some offensive functionality. Whatever you got to do to win, do it. But that's this year. How does it bleed into December? Are there any decisions that were going to be made that are still going to be made despite this result? You get where I'm going there. How about this week? Tennessee, without Hendon Hooker, remember that, is on the road. Who do they play at the worst possible time? Vanderbilt in Nashville. What do you think the number is? Even with the Hooker news, what do you think the number is? The number is Tennessee minus about 16 or 17 right now, depending on where you look. Meanwhile, South Carolina goes to Clemson, and Clemson's favored by 2 touchdowns. Careful, careful. You don't have to bet that right now. It's okay. You can think about it a little while because the chum is in the water. Let someone else come swimming up first. Just bide your time a little bit. Let's see how the market plays out this week. I'm not moving on either one of those games. I know where the temptation will be. I'm not moving on either one of them. Guys, thanks for watching Late Kick. Make sure to leave a comment. I love interacting with you. But most of all, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's how we keep all of this free.